Hi, welcome to another edition of This Issue. My guest this time is Regina Hagen, who is from Darmstadt, Germany, and she's a board member of the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space. That's the group that I actually work for. So Regina, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
We're going to talk about European issues today. So let's start out by talking about one of the big concerns throughout Europe right now, which is Ukraine, the civil war going on there. And recently, dozens of world leaders attended the mid-May Moscow events to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the victory over fascism in Europe, the war against Germany. However, the US, the United Kingdom, France, and other Russian World War II allies refused to attend the events in Moscow, citing Russia's alleged invasion of Ukraine as justification for their absence. Clearly, Obama pressured NATO allies not to attend. Well, answer this question, please. Has Putin actually invaded Ukraine? The German magazine Der Spiegel says that German intelligence is reporting that there's no such evidence of Russia troops inside of Ukraine.
Well, I wouldn't know because I don't have the Secret Service inside and the government inside. But the information that gets out to the public is very contradictory. At one point, the newspapers actually printed a satellite photo that showed Russian military vehicles and troops inside Ukraine, across the borders between Russia and Ukraine. But it turned out that it was an old satellite picture and actually was taken while joint military exercises between Russia and Ukraine went on in the past. So some say there is evidence for Russian troops in Russia, and others say there is not. I wouldn't know, it's very contradictory. But I think if there were proof to the fact that Russian tanks and trucks and troops are in Ukraine, there is so many satellites observing what's going on, they could show us the proof, and they don't do that. I am pretty sure that Russian soldiers are in Ukraine, but it has been reported that they go there as volunteers while they are on vacation from the army. I wouldn't know. I guess that there is support from Russia for what some people call terrorists, others called separatists, others called self-defense forces. The Ukrainians who don't, who don't want to choose between Europe and Russia, because that's basically what it comes down to. But I wouldn't call it an invasion. I think an invasion is a different thing.
All right. Likely causing much anger in Washington amongst the neocons who now run the American corporate state, Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel showed up in Moscow the day after the victory parade to join Vladimir Putin at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier for a ceremony. Many German business leaders want the sanctions on Russia lifted, as their profits have been severely impacted by the interruption of trade. Their influence likely helped force Merkel to go to Moscow the day after the victory parade. Can you give us your opinion on what Germany's position is on the Ukraine issue? Because at times it's a bit confusing.
I think it is confusing because it is ambivalent. And it is true that businessmen are unhappy about the sanctions against Russia because they lose their business, which is true not only in Germany but also in the other countries. For example, the Polish farmers can't sell their apples to Russia, so they have been flooding Germany with cheap apples, which means German farmers can't sell. We depend on Russian gas to a considerable extent. The Ukraine for 100%, Germany I think for about 30%, and there is a lot of other business going on there. But it might actually be the case that public pressure also helped to bring Merkel to Putin or to Moscow. that day later, because there was really an outcry in Germany, in the media and in the population, when they heard that Merkel would not go to the 70th anniversary celebrations of the end of war in Russia, because the Red Army, the Soviet army, took such a large toll liberating Europe from the Nazis, from the fascists, that people said this cannot be true. Many of the concentration camps were liberated by the Red Army. So people wanted Merkel to go. Business people wanted Merkel to go.
German people, you're saying.
German people, yeah. And at the same time, in Germany, our government is made up of two parties, the two biggest parties in Germany. One, the Christian Democrats, the conservative ones, and then the Social Democrats, who are sort of in the middle of the political spectrum, and they don't always agree on politics. So when the Merkel political group might be interested to have a tougher stance against Russia, the Social Democrats, represented by the foreign minister in the government, are often more open to negotiations, and Steinmeier, our foreign minister, actually took a large part in the mediation between Russia and the various groups in Ukraine. So Germany has been playing a very negative role, because they are the most important countries, the leading country in the European Union, which in the first place last year forced Ukraine to take sides between Europe, the European Union, and Russia. So they are sort of guilty of all what's happening. But on the other hand side, Steinmeier then always tried to mediate and to prevent an all-right civil war taking over to even larger parts of Ukraine. It's all very confusing, even to me.
Mm. And how do you think, in general, I know it's hard to generalize about an entire population of German people, but what's your sense of how German people feel about the prospects of an outright war between Russia and Ukraine that could actually grow and spread throughout Europe?
They are very worried about this prospect. I think that is one reason why the German government tries to interfere and to help, because this prospect of a war so close to German borders is obviously worrying. It would be to US citizens if there were a war in Mexico or in Canada, and that's how close it is. But also because Europe and NATO, the North Atlantic Alliance, including the United States, now got so involved in Ukraine, the US and other European allies are actually sending in military people to train the Ukrainian military, the official, the government military. And there is debate about sending weapons, offensive as well as defensive. And that would mean that if there were a war between Ukraine and Russia, Germany, Europe, NATO could not remain outside. They would somehow be party, and if only by providing military and weapons. And that's something I think German politicians and the German population want to prevent by all means.
Now, one of the things that Russia says is that they are worried about NATO expansion. Mm-hmm. Since the fall of the former Soviet Union and the reunification of Germany, both East and West, Russia was promised by the United States that NATO would not expand towards Russia, but that has happened now. And NATO bases are really right up on the border of Russia. Would you comment on that? How you think do you think that NATO expansion has been a good thing or a negative thing in the region?
No, I think it was a negative decision to do that. The problem with this promise not to expand NATO to the border is that it was not a written promise. It was not part of any of the treaties. For example, the treaty about the German unification. It was only an oral statement made to Russia, and they relied on it. It's like business people shaking hands and making a deal. They did it that way, and it has not been signed in any treaty, and that actually fires back now. I lost track, sorry.
No, that's all right. I think you answered the question. Let's move on.
Oh no, actually, it's not only that NATO moves closer to the Russian border, for example, in the Baltic countries, but it's also that the United States with their European missile defense, that NATO with their own missile defense, and then now Germany comes along and wants its own missile defense. They want to have missile defense on the border of Russia, and they have it all around with the Aegis systems. So Russia feels threatened. And whether that is actually true, that they are threatened, is not relevant as long as they have the impression they are threatened and someone tries to break up this country. And then naturally a country wants to do all they can to protect their own territory. And I think it's a very bad decision to make Russia so frightened.
German Chancellor Merkel also faces today a big internal scandal after it became known that German intelligence services had been sharing internet surveillance data with the U.S. National Security Agency, the NSA. So the question must be asked, is Germany a sovereign nation, or are they just an appendage of the U.S. corporate war state? Merkel appears to be walking a tightrope, trying to please both of her U.S. masters and her own population. Polls show the scandal is starting to hurt Merkel, whose office is responsible for oversight of intelligence.
Actually, the scandal goes further than just internet surveillance, because it also affects telephone and fax communication, really all communication that is transmitted through cables in some respect. Merkel is walking a tightrope, but she is not the only chancellor doing that. The past chancellors did the same. And the history of the United States, the NSA, or other secret services of the United States doing surveillance in Germany or in Europe is actually very long. Back in 2000, the European Parliament did a report on the Echelon system and said that the United States is spying on corporations and business and trying to get hold of research results and of development results to make use of it. And I guess it's been happening since then, and the scale of the scandal is actually huge. What the NSA did is give the German Secret Service 6 million so-called selectors. And a selector can either be a single telephone number, like the one of my home. It can be the basic telephone number of a company that might have thousands of telephones. It could be an internet address. It could also be, I don't know what you call it in English, of the domain name, the end, the .de for Germany. It could even be that, and we don't know what it is. We don't know the 6 million selectors the NSA gave to the German Secret Service and said, please survey all these persons and send us back whatever you find. You know, all that communication is transmitted to the NSA without being checked. Now, currently, there is actually big fighting in the government in the coalition between the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats, because the Social Democrats sort of feel there is a chance for the next election, which will be next year, to get the better of Merkel. So they blame her, but they have been part of this over the past many years, all the time. And we do have an investigative committee in the German parliament that operates secretly, so they will not make their research or their investigation results public. And they asked that the 25,000 selectors the NSA say, or someone, I don't actually know who, says affect government officials, businesses and so on, that they be transferred to this investigative committee of our parliament. And America says, no, you can't do this. If you will give them these selectors, then we will no longer supply you with information on terrorists that might be active in Germany. That's blackmailing. So I see a sovereign country is not blackmailed by another one. And if you are friends, you don't deal this way. And the German government is lying to us. They promised us 2 years ago that they negotiate a no spies agreement with the US. And they actually never did. They never even thought about doing it. They lied to us.
How are the German people responding generally to all of this?
They get angry and that they get frustrated, but unfortunately they don't become active. The groups actively demanding more openness and a stop to all this surveillance, be it by Germans or by Americans. They are relatively small. There is not that much going on. The demonstrations have a few thousand people in a country of 80 million. So unfortunately, it doesn't transfer to activity yet.
Germany is without a question the leader of Europe with the largest economy. The whole Greece economic collapse has been in the news lately. Merkel has so far seemed unwilling to give Greece any more bailouts. Can you shed quickly some light on this important European Union story?
I don't actually understand the story because Greece now is in such bad shape because of the austerity programs. A quarter of the population is unemployed. The pensions are so low, people can't make a living from it. Many people from Greece come to Germany to work. Students don't find work when they finished university. They are in really, really bad shape, and they obviously don't have the money to pay back all the state debt they do have. So there is only two ways to handle this. Either they are bailed out and given the opportunity to sort of restart and try to make the best of it, as other countries could do. Or they are not bailed out, but then they cannot pay back their debt, which in the end result will create more problems than if you bail them out and give them money.
Is there a chance that Greece will pull out of the European Union? And what if they do? What happens?
I think there is a chance, and Greece is not the only country that might actually exit the European Union. Greece might be forced to do so if they can't pay back their debt. They might actually be pushed out or say, we are fed up with this, we just won't pay back the debt and we will leave the European Union, which will not be good for them because the European Union also allows better trade in Europe. But there are other countries, like the United Kingdom wants to leave Europe and has never been in the Eurozone anyway. So there is some tendency for disruption in the European Union, and that would be disruptive for the states and for the individuals.
Can you give us an update on the European Union current space policy?
No. European space policy used to be for strictly peaceful purposes in the past. We have the European Space Agency as an actor, which has never been an agent for the European Union. Not all European Union members are members to the European Space Agency, and its convention says strictly peaceful purposes, so it did a lot of scientific and research missions and so on. But over the past 15 years, the European Union has developed to become more of a political than just economic actor, has made space a priority officially in official documents, and has made space part of the security and defense policy of Europe. And in the past years, they have set up their own two programs, large programs. They call it flagship programs. One is Galileo, sort of, which is similar to the US GPS, and the other is Copernicus, which used to be global monitoring for environment and security, meaning human and environmental security, and they shifted that meaning to military or defense security. And they already launched the first of 6 satellites for this Copernicus program. And the 6 satellites are called Sentinels, and they are equipped with technology like infrared, optical, radar, which all is very good if you want to survey on the Earth for military purposes, because the resolution is very, very high. So it's actually the equivalent to the best military satellites that exist in the national states of the European Union.
How can the European Union afford to spend a lot of money, because these space programs are very expensive, at the same time that they're having this fiscal crisis across Europe?
Well, not all countries are in a fiscal crisis. Germany, for example, has an austerity program, but we are a very wealthy country and the economy is going very well. We are the world leader in exports worldwide. The space programs of the European Space Agency and partly also of the European Union are funded by the individual countries who participate. And in the European Space Agency, for example, Germany pays much more than 30% of the overall budgets, but there are 28 member states. So there are richer countries and they fund the space program.
All right. You were just in New York City for several days for the United Nations Nuclear Non-Proliferation, the NPT Review Conference. Can you say something about what the NPT is and what's happening currently?
The Non-Proliferation Treaty really is a deal between nuclear weapon states and non-nuclear weapon states. It entered into force in 1970, and there are articles that prevent proliferation of nuclear weapons to other countries, for example, to Germany or to Japan. It gives countries the inalienable right to use nuclear energy. That's something Iran always insists on. And on the other hand, Article 6 says that the nuclear weapon states like United States, Russia, France, China, and the UK will, in good faith, negotiate a treaty for complete nuclear abolition. And the nuclear weapon states never lived up to that obligation. So many countries at the review conference are saying, you don't live up to that obligation, you must do better. They actually never negotiated such a treaty, and many non-governmental groups, they want a ban treaty. Many governments say we want a treaty with a timetable going down to zero for all countries, the official ones and also those outside the treaty like India and Pakistan.
What's the official response of the United States when NGOs say you're not living up to the NPT? What does the U.S. government say? Well,
they always show this PowerPoint presentation where they have one graph displaying how many nuclear weapons the US had since 1945, and you can see various steep rises, and then it also falls down once they negotiated the bilateral treaties with the Soviet Union and later Russia. And it's true, there are less nuclear weapons now than there used to be. There used to be 70,000. Now there are 16,000, 90% owned by the US and Russia. Multiple overkill for the whole world. But the US always say we do disarm, we go down. And we say disarmament means to go down to zero, and you don't plan to do that because you announced that you would modernize your nuclear weapons complex with $1 trillion over the next 15 years. That's just the United States. All the nuclear weapon countries modernize, but the United States is far ahead. $1 trillion over 15 years. Just think what you could do with that money. And by the way, Germany is complicit. We have nuclear weapons in Germany, and also those will be modernized with several $billion.
Quickly about Iran. Is Iran actually building a bomb or not?
I don't think they are. They have been under verification of the International Atomic Energy Agency all those years while the negotiations went on. Everything they do is covered by the Non-Proliferation Treaty we have just spoken about. They do nothing that Germany or Japan do not only do, also do. Germany even does more because we separate plutonium, or separated in the past, which is the better bomb material. I don't think they have a nuclear weapon. I don't think they build it. And this framework agreement that is currently being finalized between the P5 and Germany on the one side and Iran on the other hand side will make it impossible, because the verification, the intrusive inspections will be so close that they will virtually be unable to break out of this treaty and build a nuclear weapon during that time.
Why is the United States and Israel so aggressive towards Iran then, if they're not really actually building a bomb?
I think that has to do with the regional policy. Israel has nuclear weapons. They never acknowledged them. Everyone knows it. Israel is not a member to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Israel is a small country and worried that they might be invaded because this Israel-Palestine issue has never been settled. And Iran is generally not liked very much in the area, because they are becoming a sort of a middle power in the area, with all the other countries being disrupted, Iraq, Libya, Syria, many after the US and NATO invasions. The position of Iran has become much stronger in the area, and other countries start getting worried about that.
We have 1 minute left. Just a closing comment.
A closing comment? Oh, that's difficult. What should I say? I think one good thing about meeting with you again, with the Global Network, is that there are groups internationally who cooperate to be active against everything that is going on. It seems like a huge number of issues, nuclear weapons and space and spying and everything, but they are so closely related that it's very helpful to be part of an international network where you can connect to other people and fight this whole system together.
Regina Hagen, thank you for coming on the show. It's great to see you again.
Pleased to be here.
And thank you for watching another edition of This Issue. Until next time, good luck to you all, and please get organized.